You are her sister.
It's your responsibility. That's what my mother said, was sharp, arms crossed, judgment etched into every wrinkle around her mouth.
My father didn't speak at first.
He just stared at me like I was some ungrateful guest at his table, instead of the daughter who had paid her own tuition, her own rent, and her own peace of mind for years.
Hailey sat between them, not even pretending to be sorry.
Her legs were crossed like she was waiting for a nail appointment, not a bailout.
She's in trouble, Lauren, Mom continued. You have the money. You could clear her debt in a day.
What's the big deal?
I looked at Hailey. She didn't flinch.
In fact, she smiled.
Not the kind that says thank you. The kind that says gotcha. I have been saving for a down payment, I said calmly. That's my future. My home. Dad finally spoke. Hailey is your family. A house can wait. Blood can't. I nodded slowly. So it's my job to clean up her messes. Because I was born first.
Mom leaned in, eyes cold.
Because you're the only one in this family who's not a disaster.
And it's time you act like it.
The silence afterward said everything they believed about me. Not that I was successful. That I was convenient. That I could be used. Hailey's Bailey's $1,000 in debt wasn't an accident. It was a lifestyle.
A blur of boutique shopping, bottle service, and living off the idea that someone else would clean it up when it crashed down.
Someone like me. I looked at her again. She was scrolling through her phone. Not even pretending to care. My hands were clenched in my lap. But my face. Still. Calm. Not a single emotion leaked out. Because this wasn't new. I had always been the one who sacrificed. The one who smiled when they overlooked me.
The one who paid my way, while Hailey got help.
It wasn't about fairness. It was about roles. Hailey got to fall. I was expected to catch. Always.
So I looked at them all, my parents and a golden child they had trained me to carry, and I said,
okay. They blinked. Hailey looked up.
I'll give her the money.
Mom let out a breath of relief, like she had just won. Dad nodded once, like I'd finally learned obedience. Hailey smirked.
Guess being the responsible one finally pays off.
I stood. Pushed my chair in gently. Kissed my mom on the cheek. Shook my father's hand like a transaction was complete. Then turned to Hailey. You'll get it, I said.
Soon.
Her eyebrow arched. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. I just left the house. No slam of the door. No raised voice.
Just the sound of my heels tapping down the driveway and my heart finally going still.
My name is Lauren Blake.
And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me.
Because the day I agreed to give them my savings was the day I stopped being the family's safety net and became their reckoning.
The first time I realized I was born into a hierarchy, I was 10.
Hailey was 6 and had just thrown my spelling bee trophy into the bathtub.
She said it looked too shiny and made her feel small.
When I cried, my mother didn't comfort me.
She said, it's just a piece of plastic, Lauren.
Don't make a scene. When Hailey cried because I got to go to a science camp, I didn't get to go after all.
They said I needed to be considerate of her feelings.
That was my training ground, where I learned the weight of invisible responsibility. Hailey's happiness mattered more than my achievement. Her comfort was more important than my growth. I started doing chores at 11. Hailey didn't lift a finger. At 16, I had a part-time job. Hailey had a credit card with a $500 monthly allowance. I paid for my textbooks in college. She paid for tequila shots in Cancun.
And every time I brought it up, every single time, the response was the same.
You're older, Lauren. You're supposed to set an example. No one said that Hailey was supposed to try. So I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped asking to be seen. Instead, I focused on building. I worked 2 jobs through college. Took night classes. Learned how to stretch $20 into a week's worth of meals. I graduated with honors and not a single soul from my family showed up. Hailey failed out of her marketing degree twice.
She got a new iPhone to help her focus better. When I got my first real job in corporate finance, I treated myself to a thrift leather bag. Hailey posted pictures from her third girl's trip that year, writing, "Thankful for family that always has my back."
I wasn't tagged. I wasn't thanked. But I was the reason her rent was mysteriously paid. The reason my parents weren't hounding her, because they were too busy expecting me to balance the checkbook of their denial. I never complained. Not out loud.
But every time I handed over another loan, I knew I'd never get back. Every time I bit my tongue while Hailey bragged about her manifestation lifestyle. Every time I saw the way my mother looked at her like she was fragile gold and looked at me like I was concrete, strong but cold. I remembered. And I saved. Not just money, receipts. Every transfer. Every text. Every email where they asked for help. Every lie they told each other about how Lauren's doing fine, she can afford it.
I filed it all away. Because one day I knew there would come a moment when they would ask for too much. And I'd say yes. And it would be the last time they would ever underestimate the daughter who kept this family from collapsing.
The one they called cold.
The one they thought they could use and dismiss in the same breath. They raised me to be responsible. But they forgot something. They also raised me to be brilliant. And brilliance doesn't just glow. It burns. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was reviewing a merger proposal when my mom's name flashed across my screen. I answered, against my better judgment. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't even pretend. Hailey's in trouble, she said. Of course she was. Again. I leaned back in my chair, silent. She ran up her credit cards. Some mistakes. She owes $42,000. And interest is piling up. Mistakes, I repeated. She didn't mean to. She never means to.
That's the problem.
There was a long pause.
Then Dad's voice came on the line, calm but heavy.
Lauren, we need you to transfer the money.
Today, if possible.
No please. No emotion. Just business. Just expectation.
I could almost hear Hailey in the background, probably scrolling through Instagram, unbothered.
Mom came back on. You have always been the steady one.
You saved for a reason, didn't you? Maybe this is the reason.
I stared at the glass window of my office.
The city stretched beyond it, towers of ambition, consequence, cost.
I'm not a bank, I said quietly.
You're her sister,
Mom snapped. And she's drowning. No, I thought. She's floating, on the backs of people like me. But I didn't argue. Because they weren't listening. They never had. Hailey's voice suddenly cut through the background.
I'll pay her back, she said, laughing.
Eventually. She said it like a joke. Like she already knew she wouldn't. I breathed in. Exhaled slow. Then said, fine. I'll send it. A pause. My mother sounded stunned.
You will?
Yes.
I'll cover it. Hailey shouted something in the background that sounded like, knew it.
But, I added, I want it in writing. All three of you.
A statement saying this was your request, your condition, and that I agreed without argument.
Lauren, that's not necessary. Then I'm not transferring a dime. Silence. Then, fine. We'll write it. I hung up. 20 minutes later, an email landed in my inbox with a signed PDF. I read it twice. Then smiled. They had no idea what they would just given me. Because it wasn't just permission. It was proof. Proof that they had come to me, not the other way around. Proof that they believed I was so desperate to keep the peace that I'd hand over years of sacrifice without blinking. And for once, they were right. I would give them the money. Just, not the way they expected. Because I wasn't stupid. I wasn't soft. I wasn't the girl who kept patching holes in a boat while the rest of the family danced on the deck. No. This time, I was going to let the ship sink. But first, I was going to make sure they thanked me for it. And then I'd walk away with dry feet and a lifeboat built from everything they thought I didn't have the courage to protect. I transferred the money that afternoon, exactly $42,000. But not from the account they thought I'd use. That account, the one they knew about. It stayed untouched. Instead, I moved the funds from my investment pool,
A holding account I'd built from stock options, silent partnerships, and a side consultancy I'd never told them about. They believed my entire net worth lived in one savings account. They were wrong. Because when you grow up being treated like a human ATM, you learn how to store your gold where greedy hands won't reach. The account Hailey's debt was paid from was under the name Blake, a Ledger Advisory Trust, my shell corporation, formed 3 years ago.
Legally sound. Untraceable to their shallow understanding of finance. But the transfer wasn't the move. It was the setup.
I created a trust in Hailey's name, tied directly to that money.
But with strict stipulations.
The money could only be withdrawn in monthly increments of $700, contingent on her completing verified financial literacy training, submitting quarterly budgets, and maintaining 0 new debts.
Break any clause. Access revoked. She wouldn't see the full amount for 5 years if she played by the rules. I knew she wouldn't. That wasn't Hailey's style. She would want it all. Now. Without work. And when she found out she couldn't touch a cent without following grown-up rules, the tantrum would be delicious. Meanwhile, I began my exit.
I rerouted every shared payment method my parents might still be linked to, old utilities, dormant accounts, family billing arrangements. Closed them all. Deleted shared cloud drives, changed passwords, scrubbed access.
I was done playing their safety net. Then, I met with my lawyer and made 2 final moves.
First, I updated my will, leaving the bulk of my estate to a foundation for women who, like me, had spent their lives being told to hand over everything they worked for just because they were strong enough to spare it.
Second, I filed a cease and desist against Hailey for impersonating me to secure a predatory loan under my name 2 years ago, something I discovered and covered in silence at the time. No more. The paperwork was ready.
If she pushed, I'd press charges.
By the end of that week, I had built a fortress out of everything they thought was vulnerability. And all they had left was the illusion of control. One I was about to shatter. Because Hailey would log into the trust account by the weekend. My parents would check their statements. And what they would find wouldn't be gratitude. It would be structure, discipline, boundaries, the very things they resented me for. I wasn't the cold daughter. I was the one who finally set the temperature right. And now, it was about to get very uncomfortable in their little climate of entitlement. Saturday morning came with thunder. Not outside, inside my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom. 2 from Dad. 11 from Hailey. I didn't answer.
Instead, I brewed coffee, poured it slow,
sat at the counter and waited. At subah ke 8:12, I got a text from Hailey.
WTF is this trust fund crap? Where is the money?
I smiled, just a little. At 8:21, Mom called again. This time, she left a voicemail.
Lauren, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't what we agreed on. You said you'd transfer the money.
I hit play again. You said you'd transfer the money. I had. They just didn't ask how.
At 9:06, Dad finally texted. His messages always came later, quieter.
Lauren, we're disappointed.
This is cruel.
I nearly choked on my coffee. Cruel. Let me tell you about Cruel. Cruel was sitting at every family dinner, hearing how Hailey just needed support, while I paid for her car insurance behind the scenes. Cruel was watching my mother defend her while she mocked me in front of guests.
Cruel was being told I was too independent to need attention.
But now that I dared to act on my own terms, now I was Cruel. By noon, the group text exploded.
Hailey,
I can't even access my money unless I pass some stupid budgeting test.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Mom,
you made us look like fools.
Me? I gave her the money. I even have your signed document saying that's what you wanted. You didn't ask about the method. You demanded the result.
You got it.
Silence.
And then the best text of all,
from Dad. You need to undo this. Today. I replied. You told me to take responsibility. I did. I set limits. I created structure. I made sure she wouldn't spiral again.
That's what responsible people do. Hailey called, again.
I picked up. She was shrieking before I could say hello. You made a fool of me. No, I said calmly. You did that yourself.
I just stopped protecting you from the mirror. You think you are so smart.
I don't think. I know. And you should have paid attention when I offered you grace instead of structure. Now you have got rules.
Real ones. I'm telling Mom.
She's already called.
12 times.
Click. She hung up. I closed my phone, took a long sip of coffee, and smiled. Because I hadn't just protected my savings. I'd taken back my identity. They would always see me as the one who would bend. The reliable one. The quiet one. The sister who would never say no. But now,
I had said no in the most polite, legally airtight, financially irreversible way possible.
And I'd done it with their full permission. They just didn't read the fine print. Now the money had terms. And their illusion of control. Gone. Hailey couldn't party with it. They couldn't touch it. And I had never felt more free. It only took 48 hours for the polite masks to fully fall.
Hailey posted on Instagram first, a now-deleted story of her crying in her car, captioned,
"Some people pretend to help just to make you feel small. Gaslighting family is the worst." I screenshot it. For the file. Then came the messages from family friends. "Hey Lauren, saw something strange on Hailey's story. You okay? Your mom mentioned there's drama.
Just checking in. You're the strong one, always have been."
Always the strong one. Translation: we expected you to keep taking it. By Monday, my parents were in full-blown PR crisis mode.
They called an emergency family meeting.
At their house. I declined. So they showed up at my condo. Uninvited. I opened the door. Calm. In control.
They stood there, worn and weathered, as if I had aged them by forcing them to look in a mirror.
"Mom didn't wait. You have embarrassed us. Humiliated your sister.
Do you even care how this makes us look?"
"I care that you finally look like what you are," I said. "And what's that supposed to mean?"
Parents who picked a favorite and expected the other one to pay for it.
Dad sighed.
"We never meant for this to get out of hand."
"You meant to control me."
"You just didn't think I'd learn to control more than you did."
They stepped inside like they still had authority. Sat on my couch like they still had access. Mom leaned forward. "Undo the trust. Give Hailey access.
She's suffering."
"So am I," I said softly. "But you never showed up with this energy for my pain."
"She's your sister.
She's your mistake.
And I have been covering for it my whole life."
Dad tried a different tactic. "What happened to the girl who helped her family?" "She evolved," I said.
"She realized that help isn't the same as being used."
Silence. Then Mom dropped the mask entirely.
"If you don't fix this, we're cutting you off."
I blinked once. Then let out a laugh so hollow it echoed. "Cut me off from what?" "The emotional debt. The guilt.
The phone calls when your golden child overdrafts again."
They didn't respond. Because we all knew. I was the one who would be cutting them off, one boundary at a time. I stood. Walked to my desk. Pulled out a folder and handed it to them. Inside. Printed bank statements. Transaction logs. Screenshots of text messages from the past 7 years. Every loan.
Every favor.
Every time they took and never returned. I kept receipts. All of them.
Just in case you ever tried to spin the story.
They flipped through the pages in silence. Mom's lips pressed tight. Dad's jaw clenched. Then I added one more thing, a copy of my will. It listed no family members. Just charitable foundations. Female entrepreneurs. A scholarship fund. "This is who I take care of now," I said. "People who don't demand.
People who respect."
They left without another word. No apology. No understanding. Just the weight of a system collapsing, a system where I played the silent pillar. But I was done holding it up. Let it fall. Let them fall with it. Because some families don't break. They rot. And I finally stopped pretending the smell was flowers. 6 months later, I bought a house. Not a mansion. Not a showpiece.
Just a quiet, sunlit home with hardwood floors and a porch swing that creaked when the wind was right. A home with enough space to breathe, but not enough for them to try and move in. The closing was smooth. I paid in full. No loans. No cosigners. Freedom had an address now. I planted lavender outside the front door. Not because I needed to, but because I could. That week, I launched something bigger. The Blake Foundation. A private fund dedicated to helping first-generation women secure financial independence through grants, mentorship, and legal support. The first campaign. No is a complete sentence. It was personal. We offered $10,000 grants to women who had escaped financially abusive family dynamics. The response was overwhelming. One recipient wrote, "My mother tried to guilt me into giving my savings to my brother. He called me selfish. I almost gave in. Then I read about you. And I didn't." Her words made me cry. Not from sadness. From recognition. Because that had been me once, standing at the edge of someone else's need, being told to dive in while they stayed dry. But not anymore. I gave a podcast interview a few weeks later. The host introduced me with, "She turned familial guilt into generational wealth. Please welcome Lauren Blake." We talked about boundaries. About the myth of the strong sibling. About how silence, when intentional, is strategy, not surrender. Then he asked me, "If you could say one thing to the version of yourself who said yes to that $42,000 request, what would you tell her?" I paused. Then smiled. "Thank you. You didn't betray yourself. You just learned how deep the betrayal already went." The episode went viral. But the real reward came one afternoon, when I walked into a coffee shop and a barista, a young woman with tired eyes, whispered, "You were her, right? The sister who said no." I nodded. She handed me my drink with trembling hands and said, "I needed to see that. That saying no doesn't make you a villain." I left a $100 tip. Because I wanted her to know, her worth didn't start with being needed. And neither did mine. That night, I sat on my porch swing, watching the stars. My phone buzzed. A notification. Hailey Blake attempted to withdraw $1,000 from her trust. Request denied. She hadn't completed the financial course. Again. She still thought rules were optional. Still thought someone would eventually bend. But I'd bent for years. Now I stood tall. Not out of spite. But out of peace. Because the real wealth. It was never the money. It was knowing I'd finally built a life that didn't require pain to maintain it. A life where I didn't have to be the hero or the martyr. Just free. It happened on a rainy Sunday. The kind of rain that doesn't just fall, it soaks. I was curled up on my couch, reading a manuscript from one of our grant recipients, a single mother writing her way out of generational debt, when I heard it. 3 knocks. Firm. Familiar. I opened the door slowly. There they stood. My parents. Soggy. Silent. Small in a way I had never seen them before. My mother clutched her coat like it might dissolve. My father looked like he hadn't slept in days. And between them, standing a step behind, was Hailey. No lashes. No gloss. No phone in her hand. Just wide, wary eyes like she didn't know how to play her usual part. "Can we talk?" Mom said softly. I didn't move. Just stared. "Please," Dad added. So I let them in. They didn't sit right away. They hovered. Like they weren't sure they were allowed to. I stayed standing too. Hailey was the first to speak. Her voice barely above a whisper. I tried to cheat the system. "Yours." I thought I'd find a way around it. But I couldn't. I raised an eyebrow. "So you were here because you couldn't win?" "I'm here because you were right," she said. That shut me up. Mom cleared her throat. "We thought we were protecting her. That if we just kept shielding her, eventually she would become strong." "She never had to be," I replied. "Because you had me." Silence. Then Dad spoke. "You were the one holding this family together. We just didn't realize it wasn't your job." "No," I said. "It wasn't." They sat down finally, Hailey beside them. "We're not here to beg," Mom said. "We just Want to understand.
Maybe even fix it. If we still can. I looked at her. Then at him. Then at the sister who had once looked at me like a human safety net. I walked over to the coffee table.
Picked up a photo frame, my mother's sewing machine, now displayed in my office. I built everything from what you left me, I said. And what you left me was silence, expectation, and survival.
I'm sorry, my mother whispered. My father nodded. We both are. But I didn't need their apologies. Not anymore. Because I wasn't the daughter hoping to be heard. I was the woman who would stop needing their permission to thrive. So I told them the truth. I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. It doesn't mean returning to the way things were.
You can be sorry, and I can still protect what I have built.
Tears filled my mother's eyes. She didn't fight me. That was new. Hailey stood. I don't expect anything. But I'm going to finish that course. I'm going to earn every dollar.
No more shortcuts. Good, I said. They left soon after, quieter, humbled, not fixed but unraveling the right way. And as I shut the door behind them, I realized something profound.
Sometimes closure isn't fire and fury.
It's standing in your own home, on your own terms, with your own peace.
Watching the storm leave your porch. Because once they treated me like an obligation. Now, I was the lesson, the line, the legacy. And no one was crossing it again.